Hello and welcome to Make the Logo Bigger. My name is Brenton. This podcast is your gateway into the world of advertising production, crafted especially for those who are stepping in new, aiming to become producers, or simply eager to understand the inner workings of advertising and marketing. We're here to share insights and knowledge you've been looking for, with stories, tips, and real conversations from the pros. We're simplifying the process for everyone with a production curiosity. Whether you're just starting out or keen to explore the production side of ads, you've found the right place. Let's jump in. Our guest today is Cooke, executive producer and owner of Compadre Picture Co., which is celebrating its 10-year anniversary. Kat's journey into advertising is filled with fascinating turns and invaluable experiences. From starting her career in a boutique agency in Bristol, England, to working with some of the best producers in the business, Kat has carved out a unique and impressive path. In today's episode, we explore Kat's early career at BCM Agency and Zoom Film and TV, where she gained formative experiences and mentorship from industry leaders. Kat also shares her thoughts on what makes a great producer: honesty, integrity, clear communication, and the ability to foresee and solve problems before they escalate. Kat also offers valuable advice for new producers, emphasizing the excitement of the job, effective time management, and staying calm during crises. We discuss significant projects like the large Queensland tourism campaign Kat shot with director Mark Toyer, the challenges and rewards of high-profile jobs, and her perspective on the growing influence of AI in the industry. Cooke. Cooke, thank you so much for jumping on. It's great to have you on. I know we've talked about this a little bit over the journey, and we finally found some space in your calendar and your diary. So thank you. Thanks for jumping on. To start off with, do you just want to give a bit of background about who you are, how you got into the industry, and, you know, your journey throughout the last couple of decades?
Yeah, no worries. So I'm Kat. I'm the owner of Compadre Picture Company, which has been going for 10 years this year. It's very exciting. I got into the industry through, I feel like, sort of by accident. I did a screen production and a journalism major at university, and I always thought that I would go into journalism. But as soon as I graduated, I went over to England on a working holiday, and I ended up getting a job in an advertising agency over there, a little boutique advertising agency in Bristol. And I got some really great experience there, and I loved working there. And when I came back to Brisbane in the early 2000s, the job market was quite flat and there wasn't actually a great deal of jobs around. And so with 2 years advertising experience, the most obvious sort of pathway for me was to get a job in an advertising agency. So I got a job at BCM as their traffic manager. So that was a really great platform to understand how the internal workings of an advertising agency and all the different personalities across all the different departments. Quite a high pressure job. It was a very busy agency at that point in time. So yeah, I did that for a couple of years, and then I left and went back overseas. And then I was lucky enough to go back to BCM. When I came back, they gave me a job, and they were so lovely and said, well, where in the agency would you like to be? You tell us, we want you back. You tell us what you'd like to do. And at the time, there was a position available in the production department under Lizzie Hilberger, who was the senior producer then. And for anyone who's been in the Brisbane industry over the last sort of 10 to 20 years, they'd known Lizzie. She had a brilliant reputation as one of the best producers in Brisbane. So I did a couple of years under her, and then I was lucky enough to be approached by Zoom Film and Television, which was owned by Mark Toyer. And I got to work under some brilliant producers there in production. So when I got the opportunity to move over into production, I was totally thrilled, because I'm not the sort of person that likes to sit behind a desk 5 days a week, although I sort of do that now. But at the time, I was very much entranced by the production people going out on location recce's and being out and about and not being stuck in an office. So I was pretty excited to get a chance to work in production. So that was Zoom really formed the basis of my production career. And it was such a high-paced, successful production company. I got so much experience, and I definitely count those years as to be like ridiculously formative for me. And the people that I learnt under were amazing, and yeah, it taught me so much. And then from then, I needed a little break from production because it's pretty crazy working with Mark Toyer. Just the continuity of work was just crazy, one massive job after the other. And I went and worked at Screen Queensland for a little while, working in their locations and international production. So because I'd done quite a lot of filming in Queensland with Toyer, for Queensland Tourism and the likes, I knew Queensland fairly well. So I was sort of a good fit in terms of being able to talk to the likes of Disney about what Queensland might have to offer. And, you know, I could do things like we had the director McGee come over and the Disney producers, and he needed to look around Hamilton Island. So I was able to organise things like low fly permits from CASA and stuff like that, you know, Screen Queensland didn't have that capability at that point. But because I'd had that production experience with Toyer, I was able to do that kind of stuff. Yeah, and then from there I went to Brisbane marketing and did a similar thing, but for Brisbane, like tried to promote Brisbane as a filming destination to interstate companies and international companies. And I worked quite closely with the council there, trying to make Brisbane more film friendly. And then I joined Cartel Film Production, and because they were people from Zoom days that had split off. And I worked there, or I was like a freelance producer there for a couple of years. And then I kept getting approached by stills photographers who wanted production. And then at that point, I decided to start Compadre because there really wasn't any stills-based production companies in Brisbane at the time. And it wasn't as though I was out looking for a business opportunity or anything like that. It just all happened very organically. And Compadre was born in 2014, and then it's just sort of grown from there. And I guess because my background is TV production, I've got that capability. And so, you know, when Sam Scofus decided that he'd like to branch out and, you know, start directing, it wasn't really a big drama for me to start producing those sorts of jobs. And then, so now we do both TV and stills. And yes, we're busy.
Sounds like it. And it sounds like a long and fruitful career under the guidance of some really great people. And I know that you mentioned a couple like Lizzie Hilberger, you mentioned the director Mark Toyer. If we look at, again, your journey, because I usually like to ask people, you know, where did they get their training from? How did they learn? And obviously there's nothing really formal, so you learn under the tutelage of these people, you know, on set with them working, or in an office working with them. So let's talk about Lizzie then, and some of the other producers that you worked with. What is it that makes them so good? Can you put your finger on one or two things that makes you think, yeah, that's why they are so good at what they do?
Yeah, I think everyone has their own unique properties that make them great producers. And I think you draw what you want to draw from each person. I think from Lizzie, I definitely learnt that being fair and equitable and ethical is should be held in the highest regard as a producer. And I've always kept that with me. And then the other producers at Zoom, the likes of Damien Tiernan, Kerry Grant, Noel Jones, Aaron Hedder, they were all amazing mentors for me in various different ways. And, I'm still friends with all of those people. So it's really nice to have that. And Zoom very much was a family vibe. It was run by Mark and Carolyn, and, they called it the Zoom family. And whilst I was only there for 4 years, it was like I said, a very formative 4 years, because you're working very closely with the team there, under like high pressure. You're spending long hours with each other, oftentimes out of town, in a different country or a different state. And you spend more time with them than you do your own family.
And what about Mark Toyer? Now, again, I'm pretty sure he's well known in Australia, particularly in Queensland. He's very well known. I think I read that Mark was a bit of a maverick. Can you give me an idea about what made Mark so great as a director?
Mark just didn't give a fuck about what anyone thought about him, if I'm allowed to swear. But, I think that he would be totally okay with me saying that. He didn't toe the line. He did what he thought was he just did what he wanted to do, and he did a really good job of it. And he had this confidence that people loved, client and agency loved. And, he would walk, it was great always, you'd walk into a PPM with him and he'd be wearing his Crocs and his shorts. He didn't get dressed up for anyone. And, he'd command that room. And he was so clever and skilled behind the camera. Like I remember multiple times he'd rock up to locations having never seen them. He'd be able to shoot these stunning pictures, or that, suddenly on the day there'd be some restriction on the location, like, oh, Mark, now you can't shoot over there for some reason. He'd be like, oh, that's fine, I'll just make it work. And he was very, very good at shooting and directing on the fly and coming through with the goods. I mean, I think anyone who ever commissioned Mark Toyer to do a job for them was 150% happy with it. Like he always came through with the good.
Yeah.
It's quite inspiring.
He had a breadth of work. If you go back and have a look at it, he did have a breadth of work, and he worked everywhere, all around the world. Did you happen to two things with that, Kat? One of them was, my friend is a chopper pilot, and Mark was in the chopper with him around Brisbane. Brisbane's got no fly areas. And Mark was like, I want to get in there. And you've got to get clearance and all that. And my friend was like, we're not supposed to. And Mark's like, let's just do it. And he was like, my friend was like, all right, let's just do it. So again, he was like, yeah. Mark was like, I just want to get this shot. I think it's going to look great. So he was speaking from the context of a helicopter. He's like, just get in there and get it done. Yeah. He was like, oh, fuck it, because, you're supposed to get clearance. So, yes, there was that there. Did you happen to shoot the very large Queensland tourism campaign with Mark Toyer? I did one in 2006. Okay. Is that the one you're thinking about? I have been told that you run a very, very large Queensland tourism campaign with Mark. Yeah. Do you want to give people an idea of the size and scope of that job? Yeah. Well, I have to think back a bit. That was a Tourism Queensland campaign that shot all over Queensland, of course, and also in New York and London and Melbourne. Wow. And my job in Free for that was that I went on a week recce trip with the client. Just me and her. So it was a junket. Well, it was a pretty high pressure because we had to come back with locations, and not just locations, but ideas for shots, like kind of concepts for all the commercial. Because Mark was too busy to do that himself. So myself and Joe Purcell went to the Whitsundays and went to Cairns and Port Douglas and out to a place called Chillago, just looking for, obviously we had sort of a scaffold or a structure of, the
types. Obviously Western Queensland has to be represented. Far North Queensland has to be represented. Of course, the Whitsundays is going to be in there. So yeah, I sort of came back with a list of things, and I sat down with Mark, and I'm like, well, you could do canoeing here, you could do obviously sailing in the Whitsundays, you could do like a rodeo out here, etc., etc., etc. So that was that's definitely a career highlight for me, because it was pretty fun, but also quite high pressure. But I was pretty thankful that Mark trusted me with something like that. And then, of course, you've got to obtain all the permissions to do those sorts of things. And I remember when I think we went to the Whitsundays first, and we had a super yacht, or I think that's what they're called, the ones that, not a super yacht, the ones that sail in the Sydney to Hobart. What are they called?
Is it the Super Maxis or something like that?
Yeah, Maxi yacht. That's
Maxi.
it, Maxi yacht. So, and at that time we had, we'd flown out, what are they called?
No, it's okay.
But it was a camera system that went on a gimbal camera system that went on the helicopter. I'm just trying to think what they're called now.
Yeah, they're called, the camera systems are called the Cineflex. Cineflex?
It was before Cineflex.
Ah, okay.
I'm pretty sure. And there was only only a couple, and we had to fly it out.
In the
and
world.
The operators from LA. Yep.
Okay.
So these guys flew out from LA. That was another one of my jobs, was to coordinate them, get a helicopter rigged up, and they were so lovely. So Mark essentially flew around Queensland in this helicopter with this camera system that I can't think of the name of. And he came, we had the super yacht, or the maxi yacht, out on the Whitsundays. I think I was on another boat. And then the chopper came around like the peninsula. Of course, it's like golden hour. There's 20-knot winds. The maxi yacht's, speeding through the Whitsundays. And I was like in awe. I'm like, oh my God, I was a part of organising all of this. Like, this is incredible. And so yeah, that was sort of the start of that shoot. And then we had the crew had a private plane that we flew around Queensland in. Not because we were bougie, but because it was actually cheaper and more convenient, obviously, to have our own plane. So then we flew up to Port Douglas, Mossman, and yeah. And then out west, we organised didn't organise a rodeo. We shot on the back of an existing sort of rodeo, and Mark was running late in his chopper because he was shooting over the aerials over various national parks. So it's sort of on his way between like kind of talent shoots. He'd shoot aerials of different parts of Queensland. And I remember standing in front of about 25 horse people, like cowboy type people, from Western Queensland, who were staying on, like they lived, hours away from where we were. They'd come from all their stations to compete in this rodeo. And they were staying on just for us. And Mark was running late. And I had to stand in front of them and say, I was only about 6 or something at the time. I'm sorry, everyone. The director's coming. He's in a chopper. He'll be here shortly. And they just must have thought he was the biggest wanker. But, of course, when he arrived, he was Mark Toyer in shorts and Crocs. And, they all loved him by the end. And, yeah, it was a brilliant shoot. And I'm fairly sure I got a significant virus afterwards just from working such long hours. And but Kerry Grant was the producer on that one. I was production manager. And she obviously did equivalent, if not more work, pulling that one together.
Obviously those kind of jobs, when you're on them, you're very fortunate. The experience you get from them, the enjoyment factor as well that comes from doing those kind of jobs. You can't compete. Again, we all have our preference of the jobs that we like. And, with you, when it comes to the work that you do you find that you have a real interest in certain particular areas within the production landscape? You know, is it certain clients? Is it certain shoots? Is it certain styles? Is it certain locations? Is there anything for you that you find you tend to lean towards more, and you actually seem to get more of that kind of work?
I do love location shoots out and about, you know, outside of the CBD with small crews. I think, you know, Toya was shot massive commercials, but with very small crews. He could do a lot with very little. And I kind of, you know, obviously learned that way. And I just think it's really fun. Isuzu is one of my clients that I've had for a really long time. In fact, Toya shot the first ever Isuzu TV commercial in, I want to say, like 2007 or 2008 or something like that. And I was on that shoot. And then I've since gone on to produce the stills with Eric Williamson for Isuzu, who's also been shooting for them since they first came to Australia. So I love going out to Isuzu locations because they're always, you know, out the back of somewhere or in a national park. I'm a bit of a camper and a hiker in my outside of work, so I love those sort of remote locations, and I know you do too.
Most definitely, it's they're the jobs that I love. It's part of the industry that I absolutely love, and it's what I seem to kind of get more of. So yes, I do love it when they come along. Let's talk about. So I guess producers. You've mentioned a few names about great producers. Let's get into the nuts and bolts about them and the qualities. Let's start with qualities. What do you think are the qualities that actually make a standout producer? I know you mentioned with Lizzie there was a couple, but in your idea, what do you think are the standout qualities that a producer should look to have?
Yeah, I think honesty and integrity is number one. And what I mean by that is being really open and honest about your situation, whether it be budget or logistics or talking with a director or a photographer about a project, just having really clear lines of communication and honest communication with each other, no matter who it is. And I think relationships built on respect. Compadre is called Compadre because I only wanted to work with people that I considered my friends, because we spend so much time working that I just didn't want to work. You know, advertising can be a bit cutthroat, and I just didn't want to work with people that I didn't respect or didn't respect me. So I think having mutual respect with the people that you work with, whether that be your director or your photographer or your production manager, it also is relevant to your crew as well. And one thing that I wanted to say earlier about like how I learned to be a producer was also from the crew that I worked with. You know, I think the crew who have been around for a really long time and have worked with they work with lots of different producers and directors and photographers and so forth. You know, they can teach you a lot. And I think having the respect for their craft and their experience as well means a lot. And it means a lot to them too.
And with honesty and integrity, what would a level of honesty mean to you when you are talking to your clients or your crew? Let's talk about money. It's the one constant actually we have that we know that we've got to make jobs work to. Are you open about the money that you're receiving, the money that you're getting, or the money that you have for those particular people?
Yeah, I mean, I think budget is the obvious one when it comes to, you know, honesty and integrity. And yeah, I'm pretty open with everyone about the money that we have. I mean, obviously everyone is in this business to make a living. And you know, from the traffic controllers all the way up to, you know, whoever. So it's a matter of just being fair, I think. And as a producer, sometimes you have to make tricky decisions about where that money might go. And it's just about, I think, always, but I just always try and think about what's fair. And like, I think when if you are having to make or have difficult conversations with, say, crew around budgets and things like that, then I think if you're honest with them about why, you're in that position, and the situation or the circumstances that have led to that decision being made, and I think that they appreciate that. And I've found across my career that the more you can be fair and honest, the more people respect you, and you actually get more from people because they appreciate it.
So let me talk about that in context of when you are building or hiring or putting people together. What are they the same qualities that you look for when you're bringing those people on?
100%. Yep. I think it just comes down to having a care for people and treating everyone as though they're humans and not just pawns in your game of business. And because, like I said earlier, at the end of the day, everyone's just trying to make a fair living. And we're lucky enough to be able to make a living in this industry.
Again, let's stick with the producers. I do love to ask this question because it's adding value. It's a term that gets used quite a lot. I certainly love it in the discussions that I have with certain people. What do you define as adding value in the context of a producer's role?
I definitely think experience adds value, because one of the biggest roles, I think, of a producer is seeing problems before they become problems, because obviously problems generally have a financial consequence or a logistical consequence, which then equals financial consequence. So I think just having that, I think probably the fact that I was production manager for Toyah for 4 years really helped me as well, because I've been sort of at that coalface of production management. And yeah, just seeing problems. I also think that being a good people person adds value, because like we've just discussed, you get the best out of people if you treat them well and they feel respected. So I think that definitely adds value too.
You mentioned looking for problems before they become problems. Obviously, that's something that comes with experience. You learn more and more. But is it something you actually...
I wouldn't say I look for problems.
No.
I just
anticipate.
Just see them.
Apologies. Maybe I should say, someone actually said anticipate but don't assume. Do you actually build that in, when you are doing a job? Or has it become second nature that you do it so often? Because part of project management is that there is a part of it where you actually look at what problems could arise and then you have a solution for them. Is that something that you actively do when you're putting together jobs?
I think so, but it is a bit second nature. I'm also not the sort of person who has a solution for every single possible problem that could possibly arise, because I think I would be in a state of anxiety and probably be in a fetal position on the floor if I did that. But I think that you can see where there might be pinch points in a production, say when you're quoting it up, or and you sort of like, okay, well, that could be problematic, so we'll just keep an eye on that, or put some extra money in for that, or talk to your team about, all right, I am a little concerned about, what might happen for XYZ. So let's just try and head that off before it becomes a problem. I certainly don't have any kind of formal system in place, but it just sort of, I definitely think that I produce projects just sort of by gut more than by system.
Hey, let's talk about industry dynamics. Let's shift a little bit and let's go. What do you think? Latest trends in production industry? I think a lot of people that I ask have got probably the same answer for it. But where do you see the industry heading with the advances of technology?
Well, I'm not a massive technical person, but AI is obviously the elephant in the room. Well, it's not the elephant; it's already in the room. So yeah, I mean, I am keen to, and have, started getting on board AI filmmaking and trying to understand like how it is going to impact our industry, because it will. And also try and be in front of that wave, so that, when it does. Thankfully in Brisbane we are, a few years behind possibly the rest of the world. So, we do get a bit of warning when these things start infiltrating. But yeah, definitely want to be in front of that wave and use it to our advantage, but also retain the integrity and the skill set of, these craftspeople that I work with, the photographers and the directors, and, be very, very sad if the world turn their back on these craftspeople.
Do you think photographers and filmmakers, directors, DOPs, do you think that they're concerned about what's coming with AI?
Definitely, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Because my sense is that project management will always be required, because it's logistics and coordination, whereas the actual doing, with some of the stuff that's coming up now, can you pay $200 for someone to output an image or a couple of shots, rather than actually spend a full day trying to capture them?
I think we can sit around bitching about it and moaning about it and being scared of it, but that's not going to help us in the future. So it's coming, it's here. It's working out how do we make it work best for us? How do we use it as a tool?
I wonder, Kat, is it going to be the Uber moment? Taxis were taxis, and it was always done, when you think about it, it was always done this one way, and then Uber came along and it was like...
That's a great analogy.
You're like, wow, this has turned it on its head, and then, but, if you don't adapt, you die. What about people who are starting out, Kat, in the industry? Let's say production company producers, but it could be anybody really in what we're doing. Do you have any advice that you would give them?
I think don't lose sight of the fact that it's a really cool job, and our job is to bring creative to life. And I think that is super motivating. And essentially, as a producer, we support those who are creating to create. And I think sometimes it can be very easy to get bogged down in budgets or logistics. But it's very, very exciting that what we do for a job is to bring creative things to life. And we do have a role to play in that creative. And we may not think that we're part of the creative team, but I think that essentially we are. And that's very exciting. And it's a very cool job to have on the reg, on the day-to-day.
What are your best time management tips, particularly when you're juggling multiple projects?
Look, I think you can always be better at time management. I know that, over the years, I've tried all sorts of different apps and different types of notebooks and all sorts of things. But I think, essentially it comes down to triaging your work or your to-do list. And when you have multiple projects on the go, I sort of have a look at what needs to be done and essentially work out what it is that I can pass on to other people. Is there someone waiting for me to channel this work or this piece of information to them? I do that first, because that means that they can get on with what they need to do. And then obviously, probably before that, there's priorities. Obviously, there's more urgent things than others. So you're always triaging, going, what's more urgent than something else? If there's something that you can then, if you're holding it up in any way, then, move it on, in whatever way that you can, either delegate or, if it's just passing on a piece of information, like do that, because then people can get on with what they need to do in the team. And probably, I know this probably isn't time management, but it does affect time management, is just clear communication. Just being like super clear and detailed, attention to detail.
What about when things are going to absolute poop? So let's just say it's all gone to, you're on set and everything's gone to shite and everybody's looking at you. What would be probably what the first thing that you try and do?
Don't panic.
Mm-hmm.
Don't panic. I just try to keep grounded, because unless it's like an emergency safety issue, probably no lives are at risk.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just keep everything in perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and try not to catastrophize the situation. And just take everything one step at a time. And again, clear communication. When everything's going to poop, who do you need to communicate with to turn the situation around? And I think by being calm and grounded, it keeps those around you calm and grounded, and you're able to get through the problem faster and more effectively. If you're not panicking.
I know that panic is contagious and fear is contagious. And if you see it in the eyes of the people you're looking to for answers, then it kind of spreads throughout the whole team, organisation, has that flow. What's one thing you would tell your younger self if you could go back on the journey, on the start of your career? What's the one thing you'd go back and tell yourself to keep in mind or to be aware of on your way through on your journey?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. Because I actually never thought that I would be here. When I did screen production at university and I graduated, my like biggest feeling about production was that I never wanted anything to do with it, because it was terrible at university trying to produce things, with no money and no experience or anything like that. I hated it. I always thought I'd be a journalist. So I sort of, stumbled into this career. So I never really, it's a really interesting question, but I think probably what I would say is enjoy it. It can be really stressful, but at the end of the day, it's the coolest job and you get to work with the coolest people. And it's really fun, and I have a lot of friends. A lot of my closest friends aren't in this industry. They're scientists and environmental scientists, and my partner's a criminologist, psychologist, and I look at what they do every day. Hopefully they won't watch this podcast, but I look at what they do every day and I think, wow, my job's pretty cool. Like, I get to do cool stuff and meet cool people and go cool places, and I never know what I'm going to do next week, let alone next year. And that I think keeps it really interesting. So enjoy it and work with good people. Don't put up with substandard people. Work with good people who share your values.
Yeah, great answer. Fantastic, Kat. And on that note, let's finish this up. Thank you so much for jumping on. Thanks for sharing your experiences, your history, the joys, the fun, and some of the lessons you've learned along the way. Really appreciate you taking the time. So thank you.
No worries. Thanks, Brenton.
Well, that's it for today. I'll make the logo bigger. Thanks for hanging out with us. We've shared some insights and stories that I hope you found useful. Whether you're just getting started or diving deeper into ad production, there's always more to explore. Keep listening, stay curious, and we'll be back soon with some more from the world of production. Take care until then.